Halloween is upon us. Hopefully your teams gave you more treats than tricks this year. I know for me this week it felt like I'd been given a Ferrero Rocher, only to get it home and wrap it and find it to be a Brussels sprout. We've got the usual, the roundups, weekly awards, game tiers, and the traditional spooky projection beaters. We can all breathe a sigh of relief as the scariest of all, Lewis Brindle, couldn't make it today. Fell off his broomstick. So it'll just be the two Alexes who'll be guiding you through the house of horrors that was week 8. So grab your pumpkins, close your curtains so the little crumb snatchers outside can't see you. Get as comfy as you dare for In the Pocket, across the pond.
Well, where else to start this week, Sharples, than that Hail Mary, that Commanders game, the Commanders beating the Bears in what was a pretty disappointing game in general, to be honest with you, until obviously that fourth quarter. Is Jaden Daniels the MVP right now?
I think he's certainly up there. I think the pundits will probably want to give it to Lamar Jackson come the end of the year, which wouldn't be undeserved. But for me, I think we spoke about it a bit last week. When you look at where the Commanders have been to where they are now, it's unbelievable, and it is entirely down to Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, I agree. And like, you know, this is one of those players that you're going to be watching for years, that they're going to show at the end of the season that could highlight kind of what type of season this was for this kind of city and this fan base and this team. Hilarious, the clip that was online of the Chicago defender kind of taunting the crowd whilst the play's starting, and then he ends up being the guy that tips the ball. It's like, mate, come on. Come on now. I mean, I know the chances of that happening are so remote, but still, I mean, mate, yeah, the Commanders... Are they going to win? Are they going to win the NFC East? Do you think? They're 6-2 at the minute. Eagles 5-2. We're pretty much counting the Cowboys and Giants out, I would say.
Yeah, I think so. It's probably going to come down to those games that they play against the guys in their division. You know, if they, I mean, you would at this point you would expect them to beat the Eagles and the Cowboys. I think if they win those games, that'll be a barometer for the rest of the season. But yeah, they've definitely been the best team by far in that division, the standout team.
Yeah, and speaking of the Cowboys, going down again at home to the 49ers, which seems to happen every single year. Away to the 49ers, I should say. However, this idea that they're just losing to the same team every year. The 49ers have got the Cowboys number just the same way that the Chiefs have got the 49ers number, I would say. But yeah, Cowboys fan, I'm kind of writing this season off, hoping that we get some coaching changes towards the end of the year. But 49ers are in an interesting division. I don't know if you know the records of the teams in the NFC West, Sharples, do you?
I mean, I can't think of a standout team this year, so I would have to imagine they're all pretty even Stevens.
Yeah, Cardinals, 49ers, and Seahawks all 4-4, Rams 3-4. So I mean, it's really anyone's division. And funny, you had like talk of the Rams kind of selling all these pieces and potentially trading Kupp and Stafford the other week. And I think with kind of the 2-win streak that they're on at the minute, obviously they had a great win against the Vikings on Thursday Night Football this week. That's kind of turned all that around, and I wouldn't be surprised to see the Rams winning. I think the Rams, my money would be on the Rams to win this division, I think. What about you?
Ooh, I think if McCaffrey comes back week 10, although I think they'll ease him in, I still think the 49ers will just edge it. But the Rams with Nakua and Kupp back in the lineup just suddenly just look magic again. So yeah, I'd still give the slight edge to the 49ers, but the Rams just immediately, like you say, they've gone night and day from the depths of despair to just looking amazing in 1 week.
Yeah, but I mean, it's kind of you could argue that anyone else's kind of efforts in the NFC at the minute is pretty futile, considering the Lions are probably going to walk that conference, dropping 52 again on a Titans team that I thought would put up a little bit more of a fight than they did here. But the Lions just look really, really impressive. I know I had them to go to the Super Bowl before the start of the year. Can you picture another team from the NFC getting to the Super Bowl, Sharples, other than the Lions? And did you see much of this game?
I did watch. Well, I was watching Red Zone, and the points just kept coming in. I think they'll finish with the best record, and I think they are likely to get to the Super Bowl. I do think there's more dangerous teams, like just in a one-off playoff match, that the Lions would have to face than if they were in the AFC. There's a lot of teams that haven't really found their rhythm, but I wouldn't want to play the Niners in the playoffs. I wouldn't want to play the Packers, even the Vikings, and Eagles and Cowboys. Again, on a one-off game, they have got the players that can beat you. So I do think if they were in the AFC, the route I think would be a lot more simple. But they have looked unbelievable, and they're just putting up points for fun at the minute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You see, I think if they're in the AFC, they've got to contend with obviously the Ravens and the Bills and the Chiefs. Whereas I think the fact that they are in the NFC means that the kind of route is there for them. Obviously, you had the Eagles maybe getting right against the Bengals. You can argue, I mean, how good do you think the Bengals have actually looked this year? But the Eagles kind of beating them by 20 points. It was thoroughly convincing. But yeah, I just think the Lions have looked really great this year, and the pick of the NFC. I mean, it's probably going to be someone from the division. It's either them or the Packers or the Vikings, because the Packers came up with the win against the Jaguars, made it harder than it probably should have been. But I mean, Jordan Love did go down with a bit of an injury in that game. But as I mentioned, you had the Rams, had the Cardinals both winning in upsets. No bigger upset this week, though, than the Browns 29-24 against the Ravens. What I will say is, witching hour on Red Zone was unbelievable this week. It seemed like things were happening all over the place. But I mean, did I not say the other week, Sharples, that I struggle to buy into when teams like the Ravens do this because it happens every year?
Yeah, I was fawning over Derrick Henry last week for helping the Ravens in these kind of games where previously last season they'd have lost, and he's been making them win. But then a result like this comes up, and don't get me wrong, the Browns played well. Jameis Winston had a really, really good, really efficient game, but it's just so frustrating that we build up the Ravens. We've done it so many times, and then it feels like they have a loss or two like this every year, and it just really just deflates you and deflates the mood around them.
Yeah, and I mean, don't get me wrong, Jameis Winston. I'm not kind of jumping all of a sudden on the Browns bandwagon either. Jameis Winston could have easily thrown 3 picks in this game. Really should have thrown at least one kind of game-ending one. But yeah, it's just temper those expectations on all teams, really. All teams apart from the Chiefs, I would say, because the 7-0 now, they beat the Raiders as they always do. And again, it's not particularly flashy, although maybe it's a bit flashier than it has been to start the season. Maybe we're seeing a few more points in the Chiefs now. But I mean, they're just absolutely rolling. They're rolling. They look pretty unbeatable at the minute. Is it going to be a three-peat?
I mean, I'll be gobsmacked if they're not in the Super Bowl from the AFC side. I mean, like you said, the Lions look really good. I think the Lions could beat them in a one-off game, but we've said it. They've not been spectacular this year, in terms of flashy plays or high-scoring games. But they just always seem to do enough enough to win. And so, yeah, they're absolute. I mean, anyone would be mad to bet against them. Like, I'll be amazed if they don't end up in the Super Bowl, and it does feel a little bit like that the three-peat is inevitable.
Yeah, I mean, you're eyeing the Week 11 game against the Bills really as maybe the first loss of the season, because you probably expect them to beat the Buccaneers, who did show a lot of fight this week against the Falcons. And I don't think Baker Mayfield as a fantasy option is completely written off without Evans and Godwin, because he had another nice game. And then the week after that, they're facing the Broncos, who will be a tough out, but I mean, you expect the Chiefs to win both of those games. Elsewhere, you had the Steelers beating the Giants, the Broncos winning against the Panthers. Bryce Young still looks pretty awful. Chargers grinding out a win against the Saints. Can you believe this, Sharples? You know, we had those 2 games from the Saints at the start of the season, and they were 2-0, and there was all these stats about the potential one of the most points a team has scored through 2 games of a season ever. Well, I'm fairly sure this is now one of, if not the worst start to a season ever for the Saints.
Yeah, I mean, we were all gobsmacked, I think, when they opened up the season with those 2 wins. I mean, to be fair to them, you know, Derek Carr went down week 5-ish.
Yeah,
but this is why you can't overreact to the first couple of games, because yeah, they did look really good. I mean, they put up an unbelievable amount of points, but whether it was just luck, or whether, you know, these games don't go on in a vacuum. You know, teams are watching these games, studying the film, and if they spotted something that was easy enough to neutralise. I mean, I think, to be fair, they were relying a lot on big deep shots to Raheed Shaheed that just kept coming off in those first 2 games, and then once they dried up, it just seemed, well, it seemed like a 2-6 team, or whatever they are now.
Exactly. Yeah, they are 2-6, and yeah, 6-game losing streak. Absolutely crazy that you have one of the best starts and one of the worst starts in franchise history within the same 8-week period. But yeah, that's the nature of the NFL. The Falcons beat the Buccaneers. Texans got past the Colts. You had the Patriots beating the Jets, and as I alluded to before, the Rams beating the Vikings. We forgot to do this last week, and the boss, aka Lewis Brindle, told us off, didn't he? For forgetting to do our team cat.
Very aggressive. He said a lot of hurtful things, to be honest.
A lot of hurtful things. You know, he went to edit the podcast. He said, were your judgments on the teams this week, the categories? Who's the worst team? What was the impressive victory? What was the not buying it win? We forgot to do it.
Yeah, and let me tell you,
we forgot to
listeners,
do it.
He might bleep himself on the podcast, but in real life, that man does not censor. We got the full barrage of his double barrel shotgun.
Yeah, absolutely. I think because we didn't do it last week, there's doubly the tension for the listeners now as to the answers this week. So let's make it a good one. Who was the impressive victory of this past week?
Yeah, just touched on it before. I think I had to go for the Rams. You know, they get the full complement of weapons back, and then suddenly look like the team that they looked like last season with the firepower. Stafford looks completely rejuvenated, having Nakua and Cup to throw to, and they beat a Vikings team, which I think they've lost 2 on the bounce now, but still been a really solid team this year. So yeah, I had to go for the Rams.
Yeah, I had to go for the Lions. You know, they dropped 52 points this week, following 47 against the Cowboys, and then 31 against the Vikings, and 42 the week before that. They're on an absolute heater at the minute, and they just kind of look. Everyone got involved. Everyone got involved on offense this week. And I just think they're playing like they're the best team in the NFL at the moment. You know, 234 points for, what a win. Who was the not buying it win though?
I had to go for the Browns, Alex. I had to.
Mm-hmm.
Have they turned over a new leaf with Jameis Winston? I really don't know because, like you said, he threw 3 touchdowns, but as is the story with his career, he could just as easily throw 3 interceptions and then, suddenly they're right back in it. So, yeah, I'm going to need to see a couple more wins on the Browns before I start walking back any of the statements I've made previously.
Yeah. I'm going to go the Falcons on this one, just because I don't like this kind of notion that they are all of a sudden a lock to win the NFC South now. Obviously, they've got the tiebreaker on the Buccaneers, having beat them twice, but the Buccaneers are still only 1 game back on them. And now that after this win against the Buccaneers, it's as if the Falcons have got the NFC South sewn up, and I think we've got a lot of games still to play. So just based on that, I'm going to go the Falcons. But who's the worst team in the league?
Yeah, back where they belong, I think. Quite fittingly, the Carolina Panthers award for worst team of the week goes to the Carolina Panthers.
Well, I'm going to say that the Carolina Panthers award for worst team goes to your New York Jets. How can you lose to that Patriots team and now subsequently be bottom of your division and not be the worst team in the league? It's a complete disaster for the Jets. They've lost 5 in a row, but 3 since sacking Robert Saleh. They look terrible. They look like a lost team. Rodgers looks bad. It's the Jets. I have to say.
It's not the Jets.
Well, let's look at some fantasy players from this past week. Some of the good ones. I'm going to rattle some of them off, Sharps, and I want to hear who you had your eye on for fantasy. Maybe you helped some of your teams out, or who you just enjoyed watching. So we had CeeDee Lamb with a big game, 39 fantasy points, 13 for 1, 4, 6, and 2. Obviously, it comes in a Cowboys loss, but clearly Lamb's still the only guy who's going to do anything for this team. Jalen Hurts, excruciatingly, if you were a Saquon Barkley owner, got 3 rushing touchdowns. Bo Nix had 4 total touchdowns. Lad McConkey with 111 yards and 2 touchdowns. Cade Otton with 2 touchdowns. Did you not notice that the sheer ridiculousness of the tight end target in this weekend?
It's National Tight End Day, Al. So I've seen that for the last couple of years, ever since they started doing it. There is that. You can call me an idiot, but I thoroughly believe that there is definitely more throwing to tight ends on National Tight End Day. I mean, the stats speak for themselves.
There is. I think there was a stat on Red Zone, and the number of touchdowns on this day was ridiculous compared to the league average. So we had tight ends going off left, right, centre. Cade Otton was the best one with 81 yards, 9 catches, 2 touchdowns. Cedric Tillman, 7 catches for 99 yards and 2. If you were going to invest in a Browns pass catcher, now we've had the trade of Amari Cooper and the kind of passing of the torch from Watson to Winston, who would it be, Tillman or Judy? Or is it Njoku that you're more kind of interested in?
Yeah, it is a tough one. I think I'd have to say Njoku. I just think the other guys will probably, maybe just leech a little bit off each other. I still think for my money, and Njoku is still the biggest target for them. Yeah, I know. I'm gonna say Njoku.
Yeah, I would probably agree. He's kind of the most proven one for that team, especially. So I would say I would probably actively say go out and maybe try and get him on the cheap if you can. I think Tillman's not a bad stash, though. Maybe get him if he's on your waiver wire and see how he does this next week. Cousins with the 4 passing touchdowns. James Cook, 111 and 2. Achan had a great game, as did Purdy. Jacobs, Kyle Pitts, Travis Kelce, George Kittle, tight ends there for you. Stafford, Lamar, Marvin Harrison Jr. coming in. Justin Herbert finally with a very good game. And Tyrone Tracy as well, with a great game. It looked like he had a lot of juice. Joe Mixon too, Ramondre Stevenson. There was plenty of fantasy points to go around this weekend. Fortunately, it feels like we've had a slow couple of weeks maybe. I mean, Josh Downs was close to a monster game as well. Obviously, Jaden Daniels saved his game very late on with that kind of huge Hail Mary touchdown. But any players help you out specifically this week, Sharps? Anyone that you want to give a shout out to?
No, well, the main league was thoroughly depressing, to be honest, this week. I went up against a guy who didn't have his best week. He had both Barkley and Henry, who for them this season didn't play well, and unfortunately my guys didn't turn up. But I will say that having CD Lamb in another league, I went from being about 20 points behind to 20 points up. So shout out to CD, even though I didn't even register it, to be honest. I'd already, because it was the late game, I think. So I'd already just resigned myself to the fact that I wasn't going to win, and then waking up to that was pretty nice.
Yeah, I would agree. I think McConkey, as we'll get onto in another section, was a really good one to see, and obviously that kind of confidence boost in Achan. Even though I'm still just racking my brains as to how the running game was so much worse without Tua. I don't get it. I get this idea of, oh well, they're going to stack the box because these other quarterbacks can't throw it and blah blah blah. It just doesn't make any sense to me. But whatever. Players that were bad for fantasy though, Breece Hall, he had 80 rushing yards, but only the 9.9 fantasy points. Another kind of explanation as to why PPR scoring might be a little bit broken, because he did actually have a nice game, but just not for fantasy. Geno Smith, Ken Walker, bad games. It was a bad game for the Seattle offense all round, really. Drake London didn't really give you a great one. Neither did Amon-Ra St. Brown. DJ Moores had a very spotty season. Amari Cooper was a complete disaster, as was Tyler Lockett. And yeah, Nick Chubb, I would probably bench Nick Chubb if you can, until I see it, really. Unless you've not got any better options. I don't know, do you agree, Sharps? Would you bench Nick Chubb at the minute just until you kind of see it with your own eyes?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, depends on the options. I mean, if you're desperate, I'd probably plug him in. But if you've got two starters that you're happy with, then yeah, maybe just sit it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're probably going to talk about some other busts in our accountability section. Unfortunately, it was a pretty volatile week, especially for me and Lou. On the whole, a great week for Lou. We had Cousins, who was a hit with the 28 points, Jacobs, who had the 25 points, who was a hit, and Cade Otton, 29 points. So it was a huge week, almost for Lou, because then he had Jalen Waddle, who had 8.5 points and was a miss. I had Stroud with the 12 points, which was a miss, Javonte Williams, which was a miss, picked Lad McConkey, so I'm happy with that one, 29 points, but then Jordan Akins, I didn't realise, because he was 3.9, and I said, even if he gets no points, he won't be a miss. Well, he will be a miss because he was a goose. Oh. So it came back to bite me, but I'm going to flip the tables around with my picks this next week. All will be revealed later on. Sharples, you had less volatile week. You had Darnold on 18 points, which was quite nice. Kareem Hunt, 13 points. Pitts was great with 25 points, but Amari Cooper. Did you watch much of this game? What happened here?
Well, first of all, I just want to remind everyone that Lewis stole Kirk Cousins and Josh Jacobs from me, from my grasp.
And so you would have been the one with 3 hits, not Lewis.
And then again, like the last time I did a last minute pivot, I pivoted off Deontay Johnson, who was a big hit, and I can't remember who I switched to, but he was also a miss. This week I pivoted away from Cooper Kupp, who I don't think would have been a hit, but had a really good week, and went to Amari Cooper. So I think what it really comes down to is whenever I do the last minute pivot, it automatically becomes a bust.
Right. So no last minute pivots is what we're basically saying.
That is what we're saying. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. I mean, it's good. It's good to know that, though. It's good to know that trusting your gut can be so kind of trustworthy, because then if you pick someone at the last minute, well, this person's going to be awful.
Yeah.
So so it's a good thing to know at least. Well, on to some news and injuries. I want to speak about some of those wide receivers that we just mentioned then in a moment. But in terms of some injuries, Jordan Love exited the game in the second quarter with a groin injury. He's considered day-to-day. Packers have got some big games coming up, but they'll need him back. Jordan Mason exited in the first quarter after aggravating a shoulder injury. Shanahan claimed he could have come back into the game, but he never did. They've got the bye week, and then hopefully McCaffrey's back. So bye-bye, Jordan Mason. Thanks for the memories. Deebo Samuel exited the game versus the Cowboys early, diagnosed with rib and oblique strains. But as I just said, 49ers are on bye. I mean, is there a more injury-prone player than Deebo Samuel? I don't know. Maybe McCaffrey. Brian Thomas Jr., this was a rough one, exited the game with a chest injury. Tests show it's a contusion. Not as bad as initially thought, considered day-to-day. Obviously, Christian Kirk out for the season with a fractured collarbone. Gabe Davis dealing with a shoulder injury, so this is a pretty banged-up team. Great if you've got Evan Engram, though, at the tight end position, is what I would say. Diggs exited the Houston game with a non-contact knee injury. We now know this is a torn ACL, and he's going to be out for the year. That's a tough one for the Texans, who still looked like they were kind of working through some things on offense. Tyrone Tracy, concussion and shoulder injury, monitor that. Drake May exited in the second quarter with a concussion. Anthony Richardson benched. Now, did you see... Do you know what I'm going to speak about?
I think I do, yes.
In terms of, did you see him tap himself out of the game?
Yes, I did.
I mean... They can explain it away all they want with like poor play on the field and all this, but it's clearly this is kind of a disciplinary thing now, as well as kind of like a performance benching, because they've not been shy about calling him out for doing that. Neither of a lot of pundits and analysts on television. I've heard multiple people say that they've never seen this in an NFL game. A guy saying, I'm going to tap out of the game because I'm too tired. What is going on there? How are your teammates supposed to kind of respect you? How are they supposed to kind of follow you into battle if you tap it out because you're a bit tired? I mean, I think we saw this benching coming. I speculated that when Richardson was injured a few weeks ago, it was kind of a soft benching. Mm-hmm. But obviously they've said the words now. He's being benched. Do we see him back this season, do you reckon?
As a Michael Pittman owner, I hope not. I think we will. I think either Flacco will end up going down. I just think that'll be why. I don't think there'll be any other reason than that. I think Flacco will be steady enough and should probably win them enough games to look competitive. But he is a very old man.
Yeah. Now, so you're a Pittman owner, but you were also an Anthony Richardson drafter.
I wasn't, but I did want to be, yes.
Right, so you wanted to be. I mean, so put yourselves in the shoes of someone who drafted Anthony Richardson. How long is it since he's been sat on your bench? Because I'm not saying that you've been still playing him. How long is it since you've been sat on his bench? Since he was sat on your bench, would you drop him now? And I suppose who would you drop him for?
Oh, I would 100% drop him. So I'd have started in week 1, and he absolutely smashed it, I believe. He got like 30 points. Looked like the exact, that's why I was so high on him. Like that was the kind, that was his ceiling. Then he was god-awful for the next 2 weeks, so I would have probably benched him after week 3, and he would not have resurfaced again. I mean, take your pick. I think there's been a lot of decent quarterbacks, and there's a lot there out on waivers. I'm sure Jared Goff's knocking around for a lot of people. Probably Kirk Cousins is out there. Just these guys that, they've not got the super duper upside of a Jalen Hurts who gets his rushing touchdowns, or a Josh Allen or Lamar, but they're in good offenses. They've got good weapons around them, and there's plenty of guys like that. I mean, yes, they'll have a few weeks where they probably score 40 and 15 points, but they're not going to just completely let you down. Like, that's why I really liked Brock Purdy last year. Like, it was never anything really flashy, but I could always rely on him for sort of 17 points a week, and with the team I had around him, that's all I needed. So yeah, I think if you've drafted Richardson, you've had just complete abysmal play. There's 3 or 4 guys that'll come and won't hurt you every week.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Last bit of news, Deontay Johnson traded to the Ravens. I would like you, Sharples, to rank the wide receiver trades in terms of how good you think they're going to be for fantasy rest of season. So we've got Hopkins on the Chiefs, Johnson now on the Ravens, Adams on the Jets, Cooper on the Bills. Rank them best to worst fantasy options.
Oh, God. I mean, I would have had Cooper clear at the top because I thought that was a really good fit, but his first 2 games haven't been good. Devontae Adams just hasn't really done anything. Hopkins I've got no idea about. And this Deontay Johnson one, I don't really get why the Ravens traded for him. I don't get why the Panthers gave him up. I would have to go... I'm gonna stick with Cooper on top because I do think that will click. I would then have to go Devontae Adams purely because I think Rodgers is just going to start hyper targeting him, and then even if he doesn't get in the end zone, I think he should get a reasonable amount of touches. Then I'm going to go Deontay Johnson. He's going to be boom bust, but I think there'll be a couple of weeks where he has really good games. And Hopkins could make me look silly because there is a world, as R.D. Lewis would say, there is a world where he comes in and throwback to that old sort of Tyreek Hill era where he's just getting unbelievable long plays, but I haven't seen it now for 2 and a bit years. The Chiefs, I don't think they're really going to play like that. They don't need to take the sort of long ball gambles anymore. So, and Kelsey's still there to be the number 1 target. So, in a very convoluted way, I'm going to go Cooper, Adams, Johnson, Hopkins. What would you say?
I've still got faith that Cooper's probably going to contribute the most and probably be on the best fantasy offense. I would then go Adams just because, he's going to be forced the ball a lot. I would go Johnson after that because I think he's probably the best wide receiver of this bunch, maybe apart from Adams, but he's obviously the youngest one. And I do believe that they need something else in the passing game because as nice as their flow has looked from time to time, I don't think he's like a bona fide number 1 receiver. Then I'm going to go Hopkins because I think he's a bit over the hill, and him being there is actually going to do the Chiefs' offense a lot of good, maybe not him as kind of like a sole fantasy player. Yeah. So, yeah. Anyway, let's start looking ahead to week 9. Okay, week 9 of the NFL season. We'll start off looking at the fantasy implications for week 9 with our Forget About It section. Forget about it! Yeah, these players are locked into your lineup no matter what. Don't think about it. Put them in there. They're going to be great. So at the quarterback position, we've got Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. Forget about it! Running back position, Alvin Kamara, Kyren Williams, Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, Joe Mixon. Forget about it! Wide receiver, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Malik Neighbors, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamar Chase, AJ Brown. Forget about it! Tight end position, George Kittle and Brock Bowers. Forget about it! Oh, come back here, mate. Come back. Yep. Thanks, mate. I just want you to take Kittle off that list. I hand him a list every week as well, Sharples. I just want you to take George Kittle off that list because I forgot to tell you that the San Francisco 49ers are on bye. So could you cross it out? Thanks, mate. Cheers, yeah. And other teams on bye this week are the Pittsburgh Steelers. So that's the Steelers and the Niners on bye this week. Yeah, see you, mate. Thank you. Cheers. Okay, on to our player picks. Now, I believe Lewis is going to submit his this week, so we don't need to read his out. It means he gets longer to think about his Halloween puns as well. Because I don't know about you, but I've had 2 seconds to think of mine just as we were recording. So if they're not great, then don't judge too harshly. But I'm sure Lou's going to have the best puns that he can think of because he's got all night to think about them. Anyway, let's start at the running back position. Who's your running back this week, Sharps? Who do you think's going to outscore his fantasy ESPN projection by more than 4 points?
Yeah, running back, I'm going for Rashad Fright. Rashad White, running back of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Seems like a ludicrous pick. He's going up against the Kansas City Chiefs, who are the absolute number one best team in stopping fantasy running backs. But, as any Rashad White owners will know this year, Rashad White is not really a running back this year. That's sort of Bucky Irvin's job. Rashad White is more of a surrogate wide receiver / he can carry the ball every now and then. And with Godwin and Evans both out, he's had two really solid receiving games, one against Baltimore, one against Atlanta. Got himself 6 targets, 6 receptions, 71 yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns against Baltimore for a huge 29.1 points. And against Atlanta last week, 6 targets, 5 receptions, 38 yards for another receiving touchdown. It's a risky one. Obviously, if the Chiefs manage to stifle that, the sort of the quick dump-offs, then Rashad is probably going to be a bust. But with a projection of 11 points, I did think it was quite beatable. And if he does manage to grab himself a receiving touchdown, he should be a fairly safe hit. So hopefully Bucky Irvin spends his entire afternoon running into Chris Jones while Rashad White laughs all the way to the bank. Sorry, Rashad Fright.
Yes, very nice. I'm going to go Booba Hubbard. That's Chuba Hubbard. Running back for the Carolina Panthers, projected 14.3 versus New Orleans. Now, this is not the Saints' rush defense of old. In fact, they've allowed the 4th most rushing yards in the league so far this season, and plenty of long runs and touchdowns too. Hubbard himself is averaging easily over 17 opportunities a game. Admittedly, this Panthers offense is pretty awful, but I think you can bank on the opportunity versus this matchup. Let's do quarterback next.
I've gone for Matthew Stafford. And you might not think that's a pun, but some people are very scared of maths. Stafford is projected 15 points going up against the Seahawks. Not too deep this one. It's just he's got his weapons back, and all of a sudden he's gone from having poor weeks every week to suddenly just under 25 points through for 279 yards and 4 touchdowns. And I was quite surprised to see this. Oh no, sorry, that's me jumping ahead. He's going up against the Seahawks, who pretty good offense, not a great defense. Should be. I'm not going to say it's going to be a full shootout, but I think a mini shootout. And 15 points is very beatable when he's going to be just slinging it to Nakua and Cup all day. So went for Stafford.
Very nice. I've gone for Kirk Cousins.
Ooh.
Sins, projected 19.3 versus Dallas. Pretty hefty projection, but the Cowboys are bottom 6 against fantasy quarterbacks this year. Key reason for this is because they're allowing the most yards per attempt at 8.2. They aren't generating turnovers either, specifically interceptions, just the 4 on the season. Cousins and the Falcons are coming off a big game, another great offensive performance against the Bucs, and unfortunately, as a Cowboys fan, I think the odds are in the Falcons' favour to keep rolling this week. Let's do tight end next.
Tight end this week, going back to old reliable, old faithful, Taysom Hill.
Nice.
I had to double check because apparently on this episode last year I also picked him, and I said Taysom Chill, which I had written down for this, so I had to pivot on that one. Taysom Hill. Going up against Carolina Panthers, who've given up the 2nd most points to fantasy tight ends. Now, as we all know, Taysom Hill is not really a tight end. He's more of a running back / quarterback / whatever you want him to do. I just feel like coming up against this Panthers team, he's going to have plenty of opportunities. I think they'll get into the red zone a fair amount, and when they get there, they like to just do horrible things that give him a rushing touchdown. So, although it's been a bad year for him, I mean, he's been injured for the bulk of it. He's had one good game against the Falcons where he got 14 points. I just feel like he's going to get a fair amount of work in this one. So with a projection of 7.9, I think when he finishes with 4 touchdowns, it's going to be nice.
It is going to be nice with the 4 touchdowns. Yeah, I agree with that. I'm going to go Travampire Kelsey.
Ooh.
Projected 13.5 versus Tampa Bay. Like I said before, I'm kind of flipping the table on this one. I went for a 3.9 projection last week. Now I'm going for a 13.5 projection, but it needs to be done. Kelsey's had 36 targets in his last 4 games. 3 of those have been really top performances at the position too. I reckon we can write off the start of the season and lock Kelsey in as a top 4 fantasy tight end option for the rest of the season. I do think Hopkins' arrival will also stretch the field, as I just alluded to before, and give more room for Kelsey to do his work underneath. He's in prime time this week against Tampa Bay, who are a bottom 4 fantasy defense against tight ends. So give me Kelsey this week before he returns to the Fuggedaboutit. And we've just got wide receiver left.
Yeah, I've gone for Michael Pit of Despair, man. Wide receiver for the Colts, projected 12.6 points against the Vikings, who I was surprised to learn are actually giving up the most points to fantasy wide receivers, because fantasy points-wise, their defense has actually been really good. Obviously, we talked about Richardson out, Flacco in. Pittman has not been good this year, but you can see the difference in points from when Richardson was there, where he's sort of averaging about 5 points, to when Flacco comes in, where it's nearer to 14. And I just think against the Vikings, who are probably going to put up a lot of points, Flacco's going to have to be slinging it. Not a great secondary. I think there's going to be plenty of chances for Pittman to get in there, get in the end zone. And I think you'll see that projection start going up and up as long as Flacco's in there. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to get in on the ground floor, and that's why I've gone for Michael Sarlacc Pittman.
Very nice. I'm going to go DJ Monster. Are we having that? DJ Mon?
Oh no, I'm sorry.
I couldn't think of more. What would you say? More brains, like a zombie or something?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's a weird one, that, because you would think there'd be so much there, but there's just not. Trust me. With DJ Moore, I'll let you try and think of one while I'm reading out my reasons for choosing DJ Moore. So anyways, projected 13.8 at Arizona this week. It was a down week for the Chicago offense in general last week after showing some real strides over the past month. It's not been a great season for Moore, but I like this to be a bit of a get-right game against the Cardinals, who are allowing 28 fantasy points to the wide receiver position each week. Admittedly, there's a lot of mouths to feed here, but Moore has by far the highest snap count, snap percentage of all the passing options on this team, so bank on him if you're going to be picking anyone on the Chicago Bears. Have you thought of one?
The only thing I come up with was DJ Moore's murderer, Fred West.
Okay. Yeah. Might work. I don't even know if he was the Moore's murderer.
I think he was. Is that not Fred and Rose West?
I don't think
so.
No?
Okay. Viewers, write in, let us know. Who are the Moore's murderers?
Or send us fantasy questions as well.
That too, but we have a priority.
That too. Yes. Hello guys, it's Future Lewis, editing the podcast right now, but also I'm going to bring you my spookiest of projection beaters this week. Apologies that I'm a no-show again on the podcast. I know the quality has been dipping in my absence, but all will return to normal next week. But for my projection beaters, I'm going to start off at the quarterback position. Sam Darnold, because what's scarier than getting old? Am I right? Sam Darnold, projected 17.2 this week. The Vikings, they're coming off a 2-game losing streak, so they'll want to right the ship, set sail for greener pastures, pillage Indianapolis. You know where I'm going. They're against a very beatable Colts secondary this week, who they might be a challenge on offense though. With Joe Flacco in, they might be able to put up some more points. So I think the Vikings are going to need to put up points themselves in this one. I don't think they're going to have much of an issue doing it, and I think Darnold has another solid multi-touchdown showing. At the running back position, I'm going with Brian Robinson Jr. projected 16.4 points. Against the Giants, who have given up 5 rushing touchdowns and over 550 rushing yards in the past 3 games, Robinson is getting a true bell cow workload on the ground this year. He's already seen over 100 rushing attempts, so the work's going to be there in this one. And in week 2, when these two teams last played, he ran all over the Giants, gaining 133 yards on the ground. So I think Robinson is in for another strong showing in this matchup. At the wide receiver position, I'm going with Joshua Drowns in blood, presumably. Projected 12.7 points. I'm challenging Sharples here. I'm going with the other wide receiver in Indianapolis. So, Sharples, he did lay out a lot of the favourable points about this matchup and about Flacco being in. I just want to add to that by pointing out that in the 3 games that Joe Flacco has played, Downs has recorded 24 receptions for 217 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's good for 19.2 PPR fantasy points a game. So yeah, give me some of that. I'm starting Downs confidently, and even more confidently than Pittman. And then at the tight end position, I'm going Sam LaPumpkin, projected 10.6. He had his best game of the season last week, and it wasn't just like a random bomb touchdown like in week 6 against Dallas. Laporta, he had 6 targets last week, which is easily his highest of the season. Coincidentally, that came during National Tight End Day. Not so coincidentally is that it came with Jameson Williams out, suspended. So Laporta returned to his role as the number 2 target on the team. Jameson Williams, he's out again this week, and Detroit face Green Bay, who have been one of the better matchups versus tight ends this year, giving up over 14 points per game to the position. So I think Laporta has 2 good games on the bounce here. And yeah, that's me, lads. What is it next, Al? Game tiers? Game tiers. This week, Sharples, is it looking any better than last week?
Yes.
It's pretty grim last week, wasn't it?
It does look better, and I think I've probably been a bit stingy with some, maybe a bit generous with others. I think there's a lot that could probably fit in any of the top 3 categories. Just depends on how you're feeling. I've gone for 3 in the great. I've gone for Bills, Dolphins, Packers, Lions, and Falcons, Cowboys.
Yeah. Oh, why Falcons, Cowboys?
They've both been putting up a decent amount of points recently, and I just think this is the kind of game where I think it'll be relatively high scoring. I think they'll both put up a decent amount, and I was feeling good.
Nice, okay, I like that.
In the good, I've got Chiefs, Bucks, Seahawks, Rams, Cardinals, Bears, and Ravens, Broncos.
Very good, very good.
Into the meh, Jets, Texans, Giants, Commanders, Bengals, Raiders, Vikings, Colts, Eagles, Jags.
Okay, I think the Vikings, Colts could potentially be
good. Yeah.
But apart from that, I agree. Yeah.
I debated. I don't want to get too high on Joe Flacco and the Colts just yet, because it could easily be a not great game for him. In the bad, I think these ones are pretty undebatable. Got Browns, Chargers, Titans, Patriots, and Panthers, Saints.
Yeah, definitely undebatable. I'd even argue that Bengals, Raiders would be in that section for me.
Could be, yeah.
But certainly, the Browns, Chargers, and that Titans, Patriots game is going to be brutal. That's on at 6:00 as well, so we're going to see a lot of that. Great. Panthers, Saints, all of those. All of those awful games are on at 6:00, so we'll be seeing plenty of them. Fantastic. Well, that's going to do us, Sharps. Anything you want to say to Lewis so we can hear in the edit? We did our best. We tried to hit all the segments. We are people at the end of the day. You really don't need to shout and scream at us like that, and I just hope that we made you proud. Yeah, I would second that, and I also just want to say, let me just quickly get Lewis's fantasy team update quick. because I know he's had an awful take or two in terms of players that he was high on before the season. So just while he's not here to kind of come in with any sort of rebuttal, I'm just going to say to him that, ha ha ha, you're an idiot for thinking... Oh, he's really high. That's what. So I think Lewis is a secret Packers fan, is what I wanted to say. I think I mentioned this last week, but he was cheering whenever the Packers scored because he has Jordan Love and he has Tucker Kraft. And I've got a sneaking suspicion that whenever the Cowboys play the Packers next, he's going to accidentally kind of Freudian slip, let out a cheer. And it's not even going to be when fantasy teams are playing, it's going to be in the playoffs. So I'm making that call now, mate. I think Lewis is a Packers fan.
I mean...
Unfortunately.
Can you blame him after what these Cowboys have been doing?
I walked into that one. Yeah, great. Okay, well, thank you very much for listening, and we will see you next week.
Bye-bye.